prototype in victory lane in only its 4th race ever. For Bundy, the win was doubly sweet, coming on his home track in a car that had never before finished a race.
Obviously, it's special to us. We come in with a goal. You always want to win a race, but more than anything, we wanted to finish this race. And early on, we had some high temps, and we had to deal with tires going away and that sort of thing, and so we had to be very careful with it. And we honestly didn't have we didn't know how it was going to go. I think what got us for us is, you know, Cyril stayed so consistent, quick every lap, and we had fantastic pit stops. And it kept us in there all the time.
Just 3 weeks later, it all went away at Riverside, California, when Bundy tangled with the Ford Probe of Lynn St. James and Chip Robinson's Jaguar in this devastating crash. Miraculously, none of the 3 drivers was hurt, though all 3 cars were totally destroyed. For Ford and Jaguar, there were backup cars, but for the one-of-a-kind Corvette, there was none. It was back to square one for Bundy, Van der Merwe, and crew. 5 races later at West Palm Beach, Florida, it all came back together for the Rick Hendrick-owned team. Bill Adam and I were there, and it was wild.
Here's the Jaguar's chance. Jaguar tries. Brian Redmond's throwing. He's got him. Brian Redmond has taken first place. No, and Dawson's coming back. Oh, something happened to Redmond's car. Contact between. Oh, my, and Brassfield's too fine. Oh. Doc Bundy gets sideways. This is too much. He's going to win it. The checkered flag is out. And Doc Bundy will take one of the most amazing finishes in IMSA history.
Just in time, the Corvette is back on top, ready to chase the biggest prize in sports car racing history. ESPN, home of the most extensive coverage of auto racing on television, presents Auto Racing 86. It's high summer in upstate New York, and for folks up here, that means water sports on beautiful Seneca Lake, a barbecue on shore, and maybe even open a bottle or two of the famous wines for which this Finger Lakes region is world-renowned. But today, the fastest sports car racers in the world have come to upstate New York to do battle on a circuit known simply as the Glen. Hello, everyone. I'm Bob Varsha, welcoming you to our continuing coverage of International Motorsports Association Camel GT racing here on ESPN. Today, it's the 500-mile Camel Continental at Watkins Glen. And with me to help bring you the action, the host of ESPN Speed Week program, Larry Newver. Larry, I guess if you're going to be a sports car racer, this is the race you want to be at.
Yeah, I think you'd say that. If you're going to go to the candy store, you might as well go right to the Hershey factory in Pennsylvania, because all the big stuff, all the sweet stuff is here. There was a Camel pyramid that's been building all year long. The first 5 races, we had different winners, and that was a fund that was earmarked for each individual first-time winner. Well, we haven't had one for 5 races. And at the beginning of the year, they said, well, the Glen would be a special race anyway. We put some extra money in there if we did not have a repeat winner. $50,000 extra dollars. Total purse for first place, $75,000. Yep, it's the biggest in history.
And because of that, or certainly in part because of that, we've got one of the best fields we've seen in a while. 15 of the big prototype cars, including some faces we haven't seen in some time.
Yeah, 11 and Adam are back. We didn't expect the Dyson Porsche to make it, but it has made it. And the BMWs have returned. All kinds of problems in practice and testing over the 1986 season, but they're back here at the Glen.
Gary Lee will be patrolling pit road for us today. Let's go to him for more on the story.
The big question mark this weekend is the return of the BMW team. They've taken 3 months off to redesign and test the cars. The BMWs were fast back in April, but the chassis just would not handle. But apparently all the work has paid off. The cars are very fast and very stable this weekend. One will start in row 4 in the hands of John Watson and David Hobbs. The 5th row will include John Andretti and Davy Jones in the other BMW. Now, John Andretti says one way to make the BMW more competitive is to contest this event in the rain. Obviously, that's not going to happen, but we do have plenty of heat, and that should be a factor.
Heat indeed should be a factor today here at Watkins Glen. The temperature approaching 100 degrees. We've got a huge field of GTPs, Camel Lights, GTOs, and little GTU cars all running together. It should be a great race. Today's coverage of the Camel Continental at Watkins Glen is being brought to you by BF Goodrich TA Radials, built for you to take on the road. By Ford and your Ford dealer. Have you driven a Ford lately? By Budweiser, Beechwood aged for that clean, crisp taste. This Bud's for you. And by BMW, the ultimate driving machine. To arrange a thorough test drive, simply phone your nearest BMW dealer. We'll be back to set the starting grid for today's Camel Continental and take the green flag for 500 miles of sports car racing right after these messages. Varsha and Larry Newber with you. Gary Lee in position along pit road as we're ready to send the 50-car field off on its pace lap around the 3.37-mile, 11-turn Watkins Glen circuit, a traditional one and a great race course. Here's the way they'll line up. On the pole for the 5th time this year, the Corvette of South Africa's Sarel van der Merwe, sharing with Doc Bundy, coming into this race with a victory. Outside the front row will be Chip Robinson, who just made his first IndyCar start at the Meadowlands, sharing the Jaguar with Bob Tullius. Inside row 2, we'll see the international Porsche team of Argentina's Oscar Larori. And although entered with Massimo Sigala, the picture you see there is Dr. Giampiero Moretti of Italy. On the outside of row 2 will be defending IMSA Camel GT champ Al Holbert, sharing his Porsche with World Endurance champion Derek Bell. We go to the inside of row 3. Frenchman Bob Wallach in a Porsche 962 owned by Bruce Levin. He'll be sharing today with Paolo Barilla, with whom he won the Miami Grand Prix this year. On the outside of that row, Rob Dyson will put his Porsche along with co-driver Drake Olson. Moving to row 4, we'll see Irishman John Watson in one of the BMWs. Back for this race, he'll be sharing with English veteran David Hobbs. Outside row 4 will be the Buick March machine of California's Whitney Gantz. He'll be sharing with Scotland's IndyCar ace Jim Crawford. Moving to row 5, we'll see the second of the 2-car Jaguar team, driven by British international racing veteran Brian Redmond, sharing with Floridian Hurley Haywood. Alongside them will be the second BMW team car, driven by young Davy Jones, a Super V veteran, and John Andretti, nephew of IndyCar great Mario Andretti. As the cars continue to make their way around the field, we will tell you that row 6 will be Bob Aiken driving with James Weaver and Bryce Cobb. Here you see row 7, Jim Adams, John Hotchkiss, brand new Porsche 962 for those veterans, alongside Jochen Maas and Darren Brasfield. Row 8 will be my usual co-announcer, Bill Adams, driving with car owner Bruce Levitt, also in a Porsche. On the pole in the GTO class for production-based machines will be Wally Dallenbach Jr. and the fiery Willie T. Ribbs. The Camel Lights pole sitters will be Ray Bellum and Gordon Spice in the Pontiac Fiero GTP car. And the GTU, or under 3-liter engines in production-based machines, pole sitters there, Bob Earl and Terry Visger in a Pontiac Fiero. Larry, and I think we've got a great lineup for a race today.
Bob, one other thing. You know, the Glen looks terrific. It doesn't get as much attention as it used to when it had the Formula One race annually, but boy, does it look nice. The racetrack looks quick. This could be a very interesting race.
And they're coming down, completing the pace lap. The green flag is out, and we are going racing at Watkins Glen. Quickly, the Corvette back out front. Sarel van der Merwe puts that turbo V6 Chevrolet out front quickly. Moving into second place is Chip Robinson of the Jaguar, and this is a replay of a race we saw just a few weeks ago here on ESPN around the streets of West Palm Beach, Florida, when it was the same front row.
In their own way, each of these guys has something to prove. Chip Robinson, though he's run in the top 5, top 10 all year long, he's never won one of these races. And the Corvette, you heard Doc Bundy suggest that, well, we just wanted to finish last time, do well. This time, they expect to win.
You can see how bumpy the track is watching the rear wings of these cars as the suspensions work down the straightaway. This is a northern track. Upstate New York has very harsh winters. The track is very bumpy as a result of frost heaves. But as you said, Larry, the track appears to be in great shape. And Cyril van der Merwe continues to look like a potential winner.
And remember, this is a 500-mile race, not a sprint race. So you got to figure the crews have set these cars up a little softer than normal because they have to have some endurance engineered into the machines for this event. And still, with that endurance engineered in, look how rough and rocky the ride is for the drivers.
Here's Al Holbert making a move on Oscar Larari for third place, and he's got him neatly out-braking into the turn. The winningest driver in IMSA Camel GT history, Al Holbert, out of Warrington, Pennsylvania, not only organizes the Porsche Motorsports team and drives in the IMSA Camel GT series, he also builds these cars, and more than one of the cars in the field today came out of Al Holbert's Pennsylvania shops.
Holbert is one of the craftiest drivers running certainly in IMSA racing today, and even though, as we mentioned, it's a relatively lengthy race, Holbert has got his eyes right now, you can be rest assured, peeled on those first 2 cars. He does not want them to get out of sight, even here in the very early stages of this event.
You can see the shimmering mirage on the front straightaway. As we said, temperature approaching 100 degrees today. Very hot for these engines, particularly the turbocharged engines, which rely on cool air pounded into those cylinders. A very long race. 500 miles, the longest race the series has seen since Riverside, California, several months ago.
As we take a look at Cyril van der Merwe, right now the cars are on the backstretch. Right there at that point, at that moment, is the speed trap as Holbert once again looking to the inside of Chip Robinson. The top speed, by the way, in case you're interested, you ready for this? Close to 200 miles per hour at the end of that long backstretch.
And most of that speed owned by the Corvette. Coming into this race, Cyril van der Merwe was hitting the speed traps, as you mentioned, Larry, 15 miles an hour faster than the rest of the field. That's a little bit of gearing, but it's an awful lot of horsepower.
As far as the makeup of this field, as we continue to watch Holbert looking once again to the inside of Chip Robinson, the Jaguar, the makeup was 15 GTP cars, 15 GTO machines, 12 Camel Lights, and just 8 GTU cars. So you can see the popularity of the high-powered, high horsepower machines continues to grow, it seems, week after week.
As mentioned, it's a very long race, 500 miles as we watch our top 3, but Larry, the early indications are these guys are lapping at about 1 minute and 42 seconds a lap. Now that compares to a qualifying time in a range of 140. So these guys are just running slightly off of their qualifying pace when it was an all-out effort.
I think it really points out just how competitive racing across the board has become. So many of the Indianapolis car races have become this. You expect the teams to pace themselves. You just can't. There's always 2 or 3 rabbits, not just 1, 2 or 3 up front like we have here today, who run away from the rest of the field. And to remain competitive all day long, you just about have to go flat out from start to end, no matter how short or how long the race is.
Pace continues to be hot up front, and here's Holbert looking inside Chip Robinson. From our long backstretch view, it's a little bit difficult to tell if he has him or not, but as they break for the turn, he does, and Al Holbert moves into second place.
In the background, you also got a very quick glimpse already beginning to lap the GTU cars. A quick glimpse of the Dyson Porsche with Drake Olson moving up. Olson was looking perhaps toward 4th position.
The order remains Cyril van der Merwe, Al Holbert in second place in a Porsche, Chip Robinson third in the Jaguar. You see the Porsche number 3 of Oscar Larari running 4th, and Bob Wallach is in 5th place, also in a Porsche.
It's hard to classify anybody as a surprise, but I suppose that Larari car qualifying so well, he was strong all week long also. It wasn't just a flash in the pan during qualifying. He seems to be able to hold that pace here in the early stages.
Good story behind that car. One of the few powerhouse European teams that finally come over to run the IMSA competition in the United States. Had their problems early on, didn't run well at Daytona, didn't run well at Sebring, but they're certainly running well here today at Watkins Glen.
Vandenberg continues to lead. Holbert, the only guy running up front with his headlights on, Bob. He became the winningest all-time driver earlier this season.
Hey, I think the reason for that, Larry, is they've already begun lapping cars, as we saw a moment ago, and those headlights will make it that much easier for the slower GTU, GTO cars and the Camel Lights machines to see these 200-mile-an-hour prototypes as they overtake from behind. As much as a 40-mile-per-hour speed differential between the front and the back of that pack, that means a lot of high-speed passing around this 11-turn course.
And you know, Holbert is already showing some signs that maybe, just maybe, he would like to take over first place.
A little bit surprising. Al Holbert, one of the Porsche drivers who was upset earlier this year when it was decreed that they would add 160 pounds in weight to these machines in order to make it more competitive. We'll have more on that when we come back right after these messages from our sponsors. Into the Camel GT, the Camel Continental for Camel GT sports cars, as you watch the leader Cyril Vandermerve Corvette being tried to the outside by Al Holbert, now to the inside. But Cyril Vandermerve holds off Al Holbert as the battle for the lead goes on.
We also get an idea of just how important the rear view mirrors are to everybody else in this field with these very hot running prototypes bearing down you. On one of those shots you saw Roger Mandeville, which is one of the better drivers in one of the other divisions. Even he already is being lapped just 6 laps into this race.
We mentioned weight before the commercial break. 160 pounds added to the Porsche 962s to make things more competitive. Al Holbert says that that's putting extra strain on the brakes, extra strain on the transmissions, and he was going to have to be careful in this 500-mile race. And yet Larry was seeing Al Holbert going like gangbusters at the start of this race.
A shot there real quickly of Chip Robinson. The other thing about, there was a lot of comment from both Holbert and Bell about how different the car was. Both of them have been here to the Glen before. I had the feeling there was some lobbying, some politicking going on there because they really don't look like they're at a tremendous disadvantage here in the early stages of this race.
Al Holbert, never at a disadvantage. The 4-time Camel GT champion, second only to the late Peter Gregg in championships. Gregg had 7. Good look there, and there's some kind of fluid spraying out of the side of the Corvette.
You can see him once again bearing down. See how heavy the traffic is? 50 cars started this race. Nobody has dropped out yet. Perhaps we got 1 or 2 that might be showing up in the board short fashion here, dropping out of this race, but the traffic very heavy and expected to stay that way all day long.
Got a quick look there at the 3rd and 4th place cars. Chip Robinson's Jaguar, Bob Wallace Porsche. Here's the number 16 Porsche, driven by Drake Olson, running 5th on the racetrack right now. Good story behind this car. This team has been through 3 $350,000 cars this year, ridden them off in crashes at other races. This is a brand new car that they've worked all week long to get in shape for this race. We asked Drake Olson whether a week is enough time with one of these cars.
If all goes well, you can expect to have the car pretty well in the ballpark within your first 2 sessions out. My guys put this car together in 6 days, and we were turning fairly competitive race laps right out of the box. So it's not unreasonable to get it dialed in fairly quickly, provided they have prior experience and know what they're doing when they put it together.
Young Drake Olson, one of the fine up-and-coming race drivers in the United States, has a factory contract to run in Germany when he's not busy on the IMSA Camel GT season.
Holbert's gotten by.
That's a pass for the lead. Al Holbert has assumed the lead from Cyril Vandermerve.
Al Holbert not sitting back and waiting. He had intimated to all of us, well, maybe I'll relax a little bit in the early stages of this race. We're not exactly sure how the car is going to perform. But as we told you earlier, it's not strictly a sprint race. He's not holding back at all. Look how heavy the traffic is.
And you see the reason for the headlights right there, looking back in the mirrors, seeing those overtaking GTP cars. Now the gaggle of them is heading down into the turn here. Al Holbert, Cyril Vandermerve. And we'll review our top 5 as quickly as we can. Chip Robinson of the Jaguar running 3rd. 4th place is Bob Wallach in a Porsche. Drake Olson and other Porsches running 5th. All of the top runners still very close together. Al Holbert making his way through traffic. Cyril Vandermerve moving up from behind. Great racing in the early going here at Watkins Glen. Down through a portion of the track known as the Boot. Like many of the racetracks these guys go to every year, this one has a lot of up and down as well as left and right turns.
Bob, I must tell you, one of the most scenic race plants really in the United States of America. It's a beautiful place to come.
Racetrack with a lot of tradition. Formula One has raced here, and rumor has it may race here again sometime in the near future.
There's there's so much talk about a second venue in America for Formula One racing. You just wonder, will it be San Diego? Will it be Laguna? Or maybe here, maybe.
Maybe here indeed. Al Holbert leading the way through traffic, making his way through a sharp right-hander here, headed back up towards the front straightaway. You see the pit entrance, and look at that traffic. Whoa, Cyril van der Merwe barely avoiding slower cars making their way to the right. The South African rally ace having his hands full, staying close to the IMSA defending Camel GT champion, Al Holbert.
Talk about your race line. There just isn't any. You go to driver school and they tell you the quickest way around a course, but when you're in an IMSA GTP race like this with all the other divisions involved, the race line goes out the window. It's the quickest way you can get around and avoid everybody else.
You see the blue flags at the corners being waved by the course volunteers. That means faster cars are overtaking. You can imagine that's a flag we're going to see a lot of today as these big GTP cars make their way around the circuit. The leaders have virtually lapped the entire field of other classes. Lots of racing to come, and we'll be right back to Watkins Glen. Al Holbert, headlights on his Porsche 962 as he makes his way down the long front straightaway. There you see the number 44 Jaguar, a non-turbocharged V12 Jaguar being driven by Chip Robinson, followed closely by Frenchman Bob Wallach in another Porsche.
Al Holbert, in addition to the weight, which we've already talked about today, is also using a side intercooler, which is different from what a lot of the cars do. They have the intercoolers right above the driver off the roof. Normally it seems like it'd be a little easier to keep things cool, but they've decided because of all the weight redistribution that maybe let's go with that plan.
Good battle going on here for third place behind Holbert and van der Merwe. Robinson trying to hold off Bob Wallach. Wallach, a tremendous athlete, once a member of the French national ski team, now turned race driver, drives for the Porsche factory team over in Europe.
Wallach is a fiery, feisty little guy, too. He's had some very well-publicized moments with A.J. Foyt here in the States, but they have patched things up, if indeed things have... Oh, and Wallach almost getting out of shape, coming out of that tight right-hander there. They have patched things up, and Wallach and Foyt are very respectful right now of each other in terms of their driving skills.
We have another car. You see the number 16 Porsche of Drake Olsen as Bob Wallach gets the tail loose again. A three-car battle for third place here at Watkins Glen. Chip Robinson, Bob Wallach, Drake Olsen.
Remember that Olsen is in that brand new chassis. Look at Olsen looking to the left side, all over the racetrack, wagging the tail of the dog, looking for a way to get around Wallach.
Tires could very much be a factor in today's race. Very hot pavement. Wallach using Bridgestone tires, the Jaguar on Goodyears, as is... Whoa, and we see Drake Olsen going to the inside, but no, he cannot get by Bob Wallach. Larry, I can't get over the tremendous competition in the early going. These guys all want to get to the front.
Yeah, they really do. And Olsen, as you can see, trying to pick up whatever help he can from the draft. Remember, these cars are suited quite well, thank you, aerodynamically, and there really is a draft effect. Now, because you're on a road course, you have to anticipate the right-hander, the left-hander coming up. You have to be very careful. It's not as predictable. It's a lot more trickier than being on an oval.
Once again through traffic, the GTO Camaro up front, and Al Holbert ducks in front of Cyril van der Merwe as they make the pass. Here comes the battle for third. Robinson leading Wallach, leading Olsen as they dive in Indian file into the turn.
And we saw at Riverside, at the top of the show, how getting out of shape sometimes can get you into very serious trouble. You saw Chip Robinson's car sail as if he'd just gone off of a high-bank half-mile racetrack just because he turned around and went backwards. The wind got underneath all the bodywork and just lifted the car in the air like a sail.
The battle continues for third place. Here's a good look from our in-car camera. The BF Goodrich Porsche presently being driven by Jochen Maas as he makes his way into the battle.
See how it jiggles? See how rough this racetrack is? There was not a distortion because of an in-car camera. That's exactly the forces that these drivers are expected to withstand during this 500-mile.
Good look at this battle now. And oh, the BMW of John Watson gets into the side of Jochen Maas in a Porsche there, and that could have been really serious.
An interesting moment, though. The BMW showing some strength. This basically is the re-emergence of the BMW machine. They wanted to have a good race today. Yeah, they wanted to finish, but they wanted to show everybody they still had the speed, too, the moxie and the muscle to compete with these GTP cars. And I think if there's ever a doubt, that might have begun to wipe it out right there.
You Saw another narrow dice there as John Watson had to get very hard on the brakes in order to avoid running up the back of this car, the number 3 Porsche, being driven by Oscar Larari. Watson will try Larari to the outside.
Watson trying to outbrake, and he does not have the line. He's on the left-hand side of a right-hand corner, and that's going to give Larari the advantage. Now here comes Watson back using the old crossover, but once again he finds himself on the outside as Larari holds on to the race line.
Great battling here. Notice the big taillights on the back of the BMW. I've got to believe that the racers really like that. See, compare them to the ones on the Porsche in front. Nice to be behind that BMW when he starts braking.
One thing for certain, you can tell, can't you? John Watson, the veteran Formula One racer who has come to America with this BMW team, he too is looking for like a resurgence of his career, and I think Watson got him this time. John Watson goes outside of the racing line, but just extends it just a little further into that right-hander. Actually outbraked Laurenti going into that turn and got the position.
39-year-old former Formula One driver out of Belfast, Northern Ireland, John Watson, adding a lot of experience along with David Hobbs to this BMW team. That also includes a car piloted by 2 fine young racing drivers, John Andretti and Davy Jones.
We just also had a shot of the number 46 car, the Buick Hawk. Go back inside the Brasfield machine again. We mentioned about all of the new teams that were coming back or that were re-emerging. The Buick Hawk, they have not been missing, but they too are looking for some good finishes here in the second half of the season.
Watch from the in-car as Larari got inside Jochen Mass in the Porsche. Once again, Al Holbert up on the point, leading this race. Making his way into turn 10. One short straightaway to turn 11. 90-degree right-hander, and then down the front straightaway once again.
The average speed difference, again, you saw an idea of what the driver has to pay attention to as he moves up to a GTU or to a GTO car. The average speed difference between the fastest GTP and the slowest qualifier, the GTUs, was 27 miles per hour. Now, keep in mind, again, we're talking about average. Bob mentioned it earlier, that can be a difference of 40, maybe as much as 50 miles per hour in certain portions of this course, particularly when they're moving into one of the slower corners. These highly exotic GTP cars can just tear right into one of these corners where the basically heavyweight cars, that's vis-a-vis the horsepower, the weight ratio, they have to slow down significantly going into a tight turn. So that's where it gets indeed tricky.
Here comes Drake Olson trying Chip Robinson to the inside, and he has him. We've had a shuffling of the order. You saw the interval there. Al Holbert over Cyril van der Merwe. Bob Wallach has moved into 3rd place. Drake Olson has taken 4th, and Chip Robinson in the Jaguar drops back to 5th.
Now everybody has team drivers, and of course the team driver for Drake Olson is the man who owns and runs this team, Rob Dyson, the broadcast man from up in the New England part of this country.
Rob Dyson spent a very oh, we've got a problem here. Oh my, this is Willie T. Ribbs in the brand new Chevy Camaro, sharing that car with defending Trans Am champion Wally Dallenbach Jr., and it looks like Willie has a terminal problem. We'll have to get more on that as soon as we can hear from Willie T. Ribbs, but for now, Al Holbert continues with a big lead in the Camel Continental. We'll be back right after this. Harry Newber with you, and you're looking at the leader in the GTO class, production-based cars with engines of 3 liters or more. That is Chris Cord, 45 years old, out of California, leading that class.
Of course, we just saw Willie T. Ribbs, the car which was to be driven, co-driven by Wally Dallenbach Jr. drop out. Got to say they were the favorite coming into this. Wally did not even have much of a chance to practice. His plane was delayed by the July 4th celebration, but now they're out of the race.
Apparently a gearbox problem there, but here you see the number 86 Porsche of Bob Wallach passing Cyril van der Merwe for 2nd place, and this is kind of a surprise. We mentioned earlier the Corvette had about 15 miles an hour in straightaway speed on the rest of the field, but it definitely looks, though, Larry, as though Cyril van der Merwe is slowing that car down.
Yeah, it really does. Although Wallach has been coming on reasonably strong. He was 5th quick, but talk about the tall timber. This man was in the redwoods. I mean, 5th with the 4 guys in front of him makes it very difficult to pass up, given who those 4 people were. But Wallach has been coming on with regularity, and now he moves past van der Merwe.
Saw Drake Olson, the number 16 Porsche, moving up to get his shot at van der Merwe for 3rd place. Wallach brakes, makes his turn. Whoa, and all of a sudden the Corvette goes inside. There's
Wallach is slowed.
Problems for Bob Wallach.
Bob Wallach. It's always a disappointment when you drop out of any race when you're a front runner. But when things are going good, you get the feeling that this may be my day. Maybe I've got another win. Wallach, though he has been successful, has not had that many winning days here in America.
Oh, it looks terminal for Bob Wallach. As you mentioned, Larry, when things are going well, that's when it hurts most. The winners of the Miami Grand Prix earlier this year, Bob Wallach, Paulo Barillo, will never see the inside of that Porsche today.
Wallach had 4 career IMSA wins before the 1986 season. He began this year with 1. It looked like maybe he's going to get 4 more this year, but the total will remain frozen at 5 after the Glen.
And the Corvette is back into second place with Drake Olson close behind as they make their way down the front stretch.
Some of the leading GTP cars going around the GTO leader. As a matter of fact, there is the #1 car right now in the GTO standings. That is teacher Jack Baldwin in that yellow number 76. His co-driver is Jeff Bodine. They spent their week, the lunch hours, driving around the racetrack in a rental car, teaching Jeff the racetrack.
Which he'll need to know about when the NASCAR series, the Winston Cup, is coming here later this year. Down on the pits now with the BF Goodrich team, apparently expecting a pit stop. Let's go to Gary Lee.
Well, the first pit stop from the GTP class will be car 68 with Jochen Maas and Darren Brasfield. Very, very early pit stop. They plan to go about 33 laps, possibly 34 or 35. So an early pit stop for the BF Goodrich team. Changing all 4 tires, topping off the 32-gallon fuel cell. There is no driver change this early. But apparently it was a planned stop.
Well, stopping that early could only mean one thing at this point, and that is that those tires are beginning to heat up. Couldn't see a blister on any of the tires taken off, but tires and brakes going to be a problem throughout the day. We'll be back with more right after this. In the Camel Lights category of prototype cars, that's David Loring in a Mazda-powered racer.
They were the Lime Rock winner, at least this team was earlier this year. You know that Camel Lights have come a long ways in 1986. These cars are very similar in appearance to the exotic GTP cars, but it really opens up this type of racing to a lot more teams. They're down on horsepower compared to the GTPs, and horsepower equates to dollars.
There you see the pole sitter in this class. That is the Pontiac Fiero prototype car, presently driven by its designer and builder, Gordon Spice, out of England. We'll be sharing that today with Ray Bellum.
Talking about winners, this is a 2-time winner. This is an English team. Gives you an example of how a lot of the manufacturers have turned to the Camel Lights division in order to display their wares.
12 different Camel Lights entries today as opposed to 15 of the big prototype cars, and probably as many engine and chassis combinations in those 12 as there are cars in the class. Great class, great racing.
You know, Loring hasn't run every race this year, and they've been complaining about getting the right side. Oh, we've got a crash. Back to that in just a second.
Well, that's the Olson Porsche up against the wall with the windshield wiper flapping. I can't make out who the other car is just yet, but the door is open.
I think Rob was still, or rather Drake was still in the car. He's getting out. He's okay. We cannot tell who the other machine is based on its relative size. It could be a Camel Lights car, the driver being assisted out.
It is a Lights car. That's the 09. That's a Mazda Taiga car. Steve Durst, the driver, and he is hurt.
Wow, severe damage. You can see it looks like he was rear-ended. Maybe it was in one of those braking corners where the lower power of the Camel Lights car is trying to traverse a corner. And look at Durst just crawling like a wounded soldier trying to get over to the guardrail. A worker trying to console him, telling him, just relax, you are out of the way, you don't seem to be in any immediate danger. But Steve Durst, he will have nothing of it. He's trying to get completely over that wall, at least over too near the wall.
Steve Durst out of Cherry Hill, New Jersey. His legs seem to be fine, but the left arm is very, very numb at his side.
As we go down into the Hendrick pit, the Vandermeer Bundy car, of course, just to comment about the Dyson Olson machine. This is either the 3rd or 4th machine they have wiped out apparently totally this year.
Well, the yellow flag is now out. We expect pit action. Let's go down to Gary Lee.
Here comes the Corvette. The crew goes to work as Doc Bundy, who has been ready to go for about 10 or 15 minutes, helping Sorrel Vandermeer out of the car. Sorrel starting from the pole position, leading early. A very quick driver change as they're changing the rear tires, the left front. Actually a 4-tire change. Now they're topping off the 32 gallons of fuel. So the first car in from the leader serial is the Corvette. Once again with perhaps the poorest fuel mileage this weekend. They're getting less than 1 lap
per gallon. The driver change has been made. Doc Bundy driving the second leg. He's waiting for the signal to pull away. Now the crew is ready, and there goes Doc Bundy.
And so Al Holbert, who has not pitted, remains in front. Bundy was in second place. We'll have to see where he comes out of the pits and takes his position. Chip Robinson of the Jaguar in third. John Watson in the BMW fourth. We'll be back to check on the condition of driver Steve Durst right after these words. Under yellow after that crash involving Drake Olson and Steve Durst. You see world champion Derek Bell conversing with his pit crew as they await Al Holbert's pit stop. We understand 2 course workers were also hurt in that crash, and we'll update their condition for you as quickly as they can. But there is your leader, Al Holbert, as the field lines up behind the safety car.
At 28 laps, it's perhaps a bit early for the first pit stop, but it's likely to bring in all the leaders because we're going to have a long yellow.
You see Al Holbert making his way onto pit road. Gary Lee is standing by in the pits. Let's go to him now.
Well, here's the Lowenbrow Porsche 962 of Al Holbert. He has the advantage of stopping under the yellow with the pace car out, bunching up the pack as Holbert climbs out. Derek Bell climbs in, the number 14, as they go to work on all 4 tires. A more leisurely pace, perhaps, than that of the Corvette stop a few laps earlier, only because we're under the yellow. As Holbert now assisting and strapping in Bell, they clean off the windshield. The tires have been changed, and as soon as the driver change has been complete, the Lowenbrow Porsche will be ready to go back out. The leader, as Holbert made the pit stop, the door is shut, and the Porsche 962 is underway.
Well, there you see the 09 Mazda Taiga of Steve Durst as it's carried off the course. Just a devastating wreck, and that car is absolutely through.
Boy, Bob, it really is. It's got damage all the way around. And here is the remains of the 962 out of the Dyson stable. Boy, it does look like it's history.
Oh, you know that Rob Dyson has to be disappointed. He never got to drive his own race car. It's the 4th car he has written off this year. Gary Lee is standing by with Rob now.
Well, we talk about the anticipation, the adrenaline before you go out. Then all of a sudden, it's total disappointment.
Well, you know, we'd like to win this race, and it looks like today just isn't our day.
But for a driver waiting his chance to go out and realizing it's not going to happen is not quite the same as having a chance to race for an hour or 2 hours before something happens.
Well, of course, you like to do battle. You know, I mean, I'm not dressed like this to go to a costume party. I mean, you know, I wanted to race, and I guess today I just won't be able to, but we'll be back.
We expect they will be back indeed. The Dyson team, the first team this year to win 2 races on the Camel GT circuit.
Bob, I got a feeling he has not seen his machine yet prior to doing that interview, because there is extensive damage there. He's going to be devastated.
Very expensive hobby it is, and you see your leaders now. Cyril van der Merwe, Doc Bundy in the Corvette has now taken over first place. Derek Bell driving the Porsche is in second. Bob Tullius in the Jaguar is third. We'll be back to racing at Watkins Glen right after this. Glen, you're looking at the number 80 Ferrari Alba car of Martino Finaudo and Ruggero Melgrati, winners just a few weeks ago at West Palm Beach here on ESPN. Gary Lee is standing by now with Al Holbert. Let's go to Gary.
I say, once again, is the cool suit doing its job out there?
Yeah, very well, and I just wish it were cooler.
How taxing physically is it on the driver when it's this hot and humid?
Oh, it's usually difficult, but the car is really well balanced. The car is super.
Early on, you were chasing down the Corvette. Did you let him take the lead early and set your own pace?
No, I had no control over what he did. When things settled down, then, of course, I had an opportunity. My pace was a little quicker than what he wanted to run. He would really motor me up the straightaways, and the chutes he'd get next to me on occasion. But, you know, our brakes worked a bit better.
Well, Al Holbert, a master of car setup, had serious doubts about what to do with his car coming into this race, but it's obvious, Larry, that they've got all the marbles in a row now.
You know, Holbert exudes a very calm and easy-flowing exterior. Don't let that fool you. This guy is a real tiger. He's a master strategist, and behind the wheel, the drivers will all tell you this guy is rock-solid tough.
No loss of ability now as defending world champion Derek Bell takes over that Porsche. He's trying to chase down Doc Bundy in the Corvette as we watch them through the S's back up onto the long back straightaway here at the Glen.
You know, Bob, talking about the comparison of drivers as we take a look at Doc Bundy, we saw the driver changes being made during the pit stops. A big difference in the size between Van der Merwe and Bundy, but the Hobart Bell people, the two of them are about the same size, so there's a little extra factor that's involved in having two drivers in the Corvette than there is in Hobart's Porsche.
Doc Bundy making his way down into a section of the course known as the boot, kind of a foot-shaped section of a couple of extra turns, sharp, long apex turns, breaking away from the cars, very difficult turns. Perhaps as a result of that, they will not be on the course that'll be used when the NASCAR Winston Cup stars make their way here a little bit later this year to Watkins Glen. Right now, a comfortable pace, it looks like, Larry. Nobody seems to be pressing as hard as they were in the early going. Doc Bundy, followed by Derek Bell and by Bob Tullius in the Jaguar.
Yeah, Bundy's kind of a fun little guy. He's a little wiry character. He reminds me, in terms of his build, like a Midwestern sprint car driver. He's got that compact, muscular look about him. On the other hand, his co-driver, we were telling you the difference in the size and the build configuration between him and Van der Merwe. He's like a small forward in the NBA. That gives you an idea of that big difference that we're talking about. But here comes Hobart Bell's Porsche. Looks like he's beginning to smell first place.
Derek Bell wants up front once again, having lost one of the headlights he was running with earlier. You see there. Doc Bundy being shaded. Bell looks to the inside, but can't make it on the 90-degree downhill right-hander. First turn, very, very difficult turn here at Watkins Glen. Short shoot downhill, and then another right-hand turn into the Essex.
Quick glimpse, I think, of the Phil and Benny Parsons machine, the Skull Bandit, one of those machines that has entered here in the GTO class today. As the headlight begins, the sole headlight on the Hobart Bell Porsche begins to have a factor again as they move into the slower traffic, as Bob mentioned to you earlier. It really helps the traffic they're approaching pick out those fast approaching GTP machines.
Here's a look at our camera car, the number 68 BF Goodrich Porsche, now being driven by Darren Brasfield, leading Dr. Giampiero Moretti of Italy, and the number 3 Torno-sponsored Porsche 962. A look from inside the car. A little bit of a ding in the windshield as Brasfield downshifts, makes his way into the turn, and his mirrors are full of Giampiero Moretti in another Porsche.
Brasfield is one of those people who, if he so chooses, has just about an unlimited future in automobile racing. He was one of the more natural drivers that has come out of American road racing the past 3 or 4 seasons. He didn't really plan on doing this for a living, making a profession of it, but once he got behind the wheel, particularly in the Camaro and Mustang size and powered machines, he found he could do this with relative ease, and he's stuck with it.
The name said Sigala in 5th place. We'll remind you once again that Massimo Sigala stepped out of that car. Dr. Giampiero Moretti stepped in. It's Brasfield and Moretti. Youth against age. 23-year-old Brasfield, 50-year-old Giampiero Moretti. Back up front once again, making the way around some of the GTU cars. Doc Bundy, the black and silver Corvette. As a Corvette in front of him, a late model, more production-oriented car, kind of moves down into the racing line and then out once again to let the faster cars go by.
Slightly more production-oriented. You know, the Corvette, the GTP Corvette, is probably closer to the factory style and lines than any of the other GTP cars, but when you see it next to a production Corvette, you can see just how different it really is.
Smoke coming, engine problem there for the, I believe that's the number 66 Mike Meyer, Jim Rothbard Camel light car. Only problem there is that could be leaving some oil on the track. We'll have to watch those turns.
That machine won earlier this year, of course, at Sebring, so it is one of the top runners, easily one of the top 5 cars in that division.
Interesting comparison between the Corvette as Derek Bell looks to the inside, but he's got slower traffic in front of him. That's what happens on a course with 50 cars running at different speeds. That Chevy Corvette is actually an American engine in a British-built Lola chassis. They had the pole position today. On the outside was the Jaguar, which was, of course, the British-built V12 non-turbocharged engine in a chassis built here in the United States in Winchester, Virginia. So you had an American engine in a British-built chassis facing against a British engine in an American-built chassis on the front row here at Watkins Glen.
And a reasonable amount riding for General Motors on that Corvette. It is, as Bob told you earlier, a one-of-a-kind in racing.
Matched up against the Porsches today, we asked Doc Bundy earlier whether or not this new car, the car that replaced the one that was destroyed at Riverside, is actually ready to stand up to the rigors of a 500-mile race. Here's what he told us.
When you have to run against the Porsches, which they don't give you any break. I mean, they don't get out there and set on a nice conservative pace. There's enough of them that they go out and they go for it right from the beginning. And I'm not finding fault with them. I'm saying that makes life difficult for the rest of us that come along with new cars. And you'll find that this 500-mile race is going to be an out-and-out sprint race for 4 hours and close to 4.5 hours. So that's the difficult part. You know, how hard do you run your engine? How hard do you push the car? And do you back off and just go for the finish? Well, that's not our heritage. I mean, that's not the kind of thing that we want. We know we can make the car finished. We've proven that so far. This car has finished every race it's been in, the new car. And that's fine to finish. Now we want to start winning races, and we're going to take risks. In order to win, you have to take some risks. But that's how you make a better car.
Nice Lone Ranger mentality on that team. We talked with Cyril Vandenberg before the race. He said there's 9 of them and there's 1 of us. And there's a real rationale behind that, because with 9 Porsches, you can trade development secrets and make sure everybody has the best car they possibly can have. But up front, it's the Chevy Corvette being driven by Doc Bundy, followed by Porsche, Porsche, and Porsche. We'll be back to Watkins Glen right after these messages. Bell takes a look inside and tries to outbrake Doc Bundy in the Corvette, but he will not get it. Bundy continues to lead over Bell.
As Derek Bell burns up valuable fuel, we make that comment because right now is the time of the race when we kind of anticipated the first pit stops. If you divide this race into 3 pit stops or into quarters, you had to go about 37 laps of this 148-lap race in order to make it on 3 stops. Everybody stopped early, remember, because of that lengthy yellow flag. Now, the yellow flag slows down the fuel consumption, so we'll see how it's played. But everybody goes easily about 115 miles on a load of fuel, and further if you can stretch it in any way, shape, or form.
In our camera view here, you also get a look at the battle for GTO. Out in front of Bundy right now, you see the Toyota leading the GTO class. Chris Cord, Dennis Ossie sharing that car.
Oh,
whoa.
Wow.
And they almost took the Corvette right off it.
It's a lead change.
Derek Bell takes to the inside, taking advantage of a traffic problem suffered by Doc Bundy, and assumes the lead.
I think Cord probably just looked up at the wrong moment and thought, boy, I better get out of the way. And unfortunately, he moved the wrong way for the vet.
Classic traffic incident. 2 drivers thinking that they'll each go the other way, and they wind up going to the same side of the racetrack. Derek Bell, your current leader.
Bob, I got to tell you that I think of all the racing drivers, particularly the international race drivers, nobody has more fun at the sport than this guy. He and Redmond, I think, are the 2 friendliest people, the happiest people to be around. I'm not saying I want to live with them, but spending as much time with them as possible would be a lot of fun.
They are very, very fine gentlemen. Derek Bell making one of his 15 or 20 trips across the Atlantic Ocean each year. He also drives for the Porsche factory team on the World Endurance Circuit, now known as the World Sports Car Championship. 15 or 20 trips across the ocean each year. That's really got to take it out of him. Following up on my point, though, we had the Toyota in the lead, and you also saw the number 76 yellow Camaro being driven by NASCAR star Jeff Bodine and Jack Baldwin. So that is a very, very close battle as well, and we'll be keeping an eye on the GTO cars. Good look at the interval there between Derek Bell opening up a big lead on Doc Bundy and the Jaguar of Bob Tullius.
By the way, for those of you who might be watching who've ever been on this race course, the big problem Bodine was having, there he is again on the screen, he wasn't using the brakes enough. When he went out the first few laps here, as we look at the Bellum Spice car, the car is running so well high up, placing in the Camel Lights division. In this much lighter car than the Winston Cup car, Bodine was being too gentle on the brakes. His co-driver told him, hey, we got brakes in these things, use them. He went out and then improved his lap time by like 2 or 3 seconds.
We got a good look at Ray Bellum's Pontiac Fiero there, having taken over from David Loring to lead the Camel Lights class. Here is the number 5 Porsche, presently running 8th on the racetrack. Bob Aiken behind the wheel right now, sharing that car today with Englishman James Weaver, American Price Cobb.
And Cobb, by the way, got the ride because his normal car owner, Rob Dyson, wasn't absolutely certain they were going to be able to field the car for this weekend. And Rob wanted Price to get more time behind the wheel, more experience, and so called his buddy Bob Aiken and got this ride for Price.
Looking back another place, here's the battle for 9th place. It's John Morton behind the wheel of the car, the Porsche that he shares with Jim Busby, battling with the number 18 BMW. You see the number 80 Camel Lights car in front of them. BMW is what I call the young BMW. That's the John Andretti, Davy Jones car, as opposed to the John Watson, David Hobbs team car, the experienced machine.
Even though know, Bob, they were going after race results and not necessarily high speed in qualifying. You know, they were on the top 5 in speeds at the early part of this weekend. The BMWs have both stayed on the track during this race. Up to this point, you've got to mark this one up as a success for the re-emergence of the BMWs.
Yes, indeed. A lot of speed in those machines. Unfortunately, it was mechanical things that dropped them from the series for a while. A few fires that fortunately didn't injure anyone. A bad crash at Sebring that also left its driver unhurt. A little bit further back, here's the number 10 Porsche, Jim Adams and John Hotchkiss. Brand new Porsche. Used to drive a March chassis with a Porsche engine. Decided that they would go first class and buy the whole 962 package.
Yeah, Jim Adams may be new to a lot of people, but he does have 3 career wins.
Here's a battle a little bit further back. Bruce Levin co-driving with Bill Adam, and also the Buick, the number 46 car with Whitney Gantz and Jim Crawford. Crawford is the Indy car race out of Scotland, having taken over in the Buick program for John Paul Jr. We asked Crawford in his first look at Watkins Glen whether there is any place where you can really relax on this 11-turn course.
Very, very few. You're hanging on, really. Even down the straights, the car wants to jump from one side of the track to the other. And then you've got the slower cars to contend with. You know, we're going, I don't know, 200 and something miles an hour down the straight, and the cars on there going 115. So in this, we're closing at nearly 100 miles an hour. And if they don't see you coming, you can have all sorts of magic moments.
Welcome to the Camel GT, Jim.
Magic moments. I like the way he puts that. Hello, Lee Summit, Missouri. That's his adopted home, and I'm told that's where he still spends most of his time, even though Lancashire, or however they say it over in England, is the original home of Crawford.
Lancashire, don't you know? There's a shot. Doc Bundy presently running in second place. The gap back to the number 44 Jaguar and the number 3 Porsche. Driven by Dr. Jean-Pierre Moretti, takes the Jaguar to the inside. Bob Tullius gets bumped back another place in his Jaguar.
This international team with Moretti behind the wheel, they're having a good day. They too have had a good weekend. They have been among the top 5 runners, and I feel like they've bided their time, and I think they're a real candidate to finish well, maybe win this race.
We mentioned they're one of the couple of European powerhouse teams coming over to run IMSA this year, and I'm sure we'll see more of those in the future. Right now, Derek Bell is your leader, followed by Doc Bundy. Jean-Pierre Moretti in a Porsche has taken over 3rd place. Bob Tullius in a Jaguar 4th. Aaron Grassfield in a Porsche is 5th. We'll be back to Watkins Glen for more running of the Camel Continental right after these messages. 500-mile Camel Continental. Bob Varsha, Larry Newber, and Gary Lee with you. We're looking at the battle for second place. Doc Bundy in the number 52 Chevrolet Corvette, holding off the number 3 Porsche of Dr. Jean-Pierre Moretti of Italy.
To underscore the significance of this event for the vet, we don't believe has ever gone 500 competitive miles in a race. So they would really like to turn in a finish here today.
The Corvette, a 2-year-old chassis built by the Lola Company in Great Britain with a Chevrolet V6 turbo engine. And we can't overstate the length of development it normally takes on these 230-mile-an-hour prototype sports cars. So the fact that the Chevrolet has done as well as it has in such a short length of time, virtually its first full year of racing on the IMSA Camel GT circuit, is really quite a story.
The Brun Porsche uses slower trapping to catch up. He moves to the inside of the Corvette, and they touch. They touch going into that left-hander. Really seemed to stun the Corvette with Van der Merwe behind the wheel. You'll wonder, in a moment like this with these highly sophisticated machines, did it do any damage underneath?
Craig, I believe it's Bundy behind the wheel of the car, but you're absolutely right, Larry. He took a shot there and slowed down, but no apparent damage now. He's making his way along in 3rd place.
Doc Bundy has got to be checking all the gauges right now, trying to figure out just was any damage sustained in that slight tap, or what appeared to be a slight tap to us, but it was really a big thud when you're inside the car, believe me, at 110, 120 miles an hour.
So the Brun Motorsports team is now in 2nd place behind this man, defending World Endurance Champion Derek Bell and Al Holbert's number 14 Porsche. Just putting another lap on one of the BF Goodrich cars. Gary Lee is standing by, patrolling Pitts Road today. Let's go down to Gary and see what he's got.
Would you believe there may be a market for used tires in motorsports? These are, in fact, the tires that the Lowenbrow Porsche number 14 started the race on. Now, their crew actually has 6 sets of tires, but they like this compound. So this is a buildup of rubber that developed during that slowdown caution period. So they're actually scraping the rubber off. There are about 20 good laps left in these tires. So if Al Holbert or Derek Bell should need them, they're available for late in the race.
Now That's unusual. The problem is normally too little rubber on the tires. They've got too much.
The GTO leaders, Jack Baldwin and Jeff Bodine. Baldwin is still behind the wheel. In the case of a guy who shops at the big and tall stores, racing with a guy a normal size like me.
So Jack Baldwin stays behind the wheel and in the lead in GTO. Now we have Corvette action on pit road. Where's Gary?
Corvette stops right on the money. The second stop as Doc Bundy is about to climb out. Sorrel Vandermeer, who earlier said he was enjoying his rest period, about to climb back in as they clean off the windshield. A 4-tire change. And now Bundy goes to work connecting the cool suit and strapping in Sorrel Vandermeer. The vet that started from the pole position led early in this 500-mile event. And now the driver change complete. Doc is ready for a well-deserved break and a long rest as he climbs back over the pit wall. And they've killed the engine. Trying to find the fire. The crew will have to push the car. Sorrel Vandermeer finds the fire as the crew pushes the Corvette away.
Well, now, we thought we maybe had a mechanical problem with the Corvette, but it doesn't appear so. New driver, new rubber, and they're back out. David Hobbs running in the number 19 BMW at this point, as you see the Corvette making its way down pit road and back into action here at Watkins Glen.
It looks a little hesitant, though, as he's going down the exit to the pit lane. There's Hobbs again, the man from Pryor's Hardwick, England, who also has a car dealership in Columbus, Ohio, and a variety of other businesses sprinkled around the United States of America. Obviously a part-time TV commentator, too. David Hobbs, one of the most busy and active lives, I guess, of anybody in the world, to tell you the truth.
That BMW, very, very impressive today. Smallest engine on the circuit, a 2.1-liter turbocharged inline 4-cylinder engine. They're making the most of it. Obviously, their testing has worked out just fine. Now, Gary Lee is standing by with Doc Bundy in the Corvette pits, where the problems have apparently not yet finished. Let's go down to Gary.
We got a problem with the car. I thought it was a flat because when I went into turn 2, I couldn't even make that turn. I almost went into the guardrail. I got forced off on the back straightaway by a GTO car on the fast part. That may have broke something up in front of the car. I don't know.
It's just a matter now of letting Sorrel go out and shake the car down, as it were?
Yeah, I'm hoping it was a flat, but I don't think it was because I hit every tire when I come in, and they all felt all right, so I don't know.
Pensive Doc Bundy as we watch the leader, Derek Bell, in the number 14 Lowenbrow Porsche, making his way around this 3.37-mile Watkins Glen course.
Bell putting another lap on probably Bruce Jenner at this point. Jenner was the 3rd fastest timer in the GTO division, 23rd overall, one of the front runners in GTO.
Just a good example of how the GTO cars are getting lapped by the GTP cars. Well, more trouble in the Corvette pit. Sorrel Vandermeer is back in. Let's go to Gary.
Doc, you alluded to perhaps a suspension problem. Obviously, there is a problem there.
Yeah, well, it's hard to tell what it is, Gary, but when I was forced off, I got hit once by the number 3 car. He hit me pretty good in the side. You know, I don't know if that broke an A-arm or... I think it's probably an upper or lower A-arm, my guess.
And so, with the Corvette in the pits, the race goes on as you watch the number 3 Porsche being driven by Dr. Giampiero Moretti, presently shown in 2nd place right behind this man, closing up on Derek Bell and the number 14 Porsche as they dice through traffic.
Ooh, snaking around and trying to get underneath Baldwin. We've seen him, doesn't seem all that long ago, but again, another very vivid example of the superiority in terms of speed and horsepower of the GTP machines. And look at Fischetti, boy, he's really doing a good job.
Lighting up the rear tires, desperately trying to get around, trying to get around Derek Bell, and there's a classic example of what traffic can do to you.
I think I call him Fischetti, obviously.
To the inside,
and that's Moretti spinning. Moretti losing control. He goes into that hard right-hander. He went down to the bottom side of the racetrack trying to get the advantage on the Holbert and Bell Porsche with Derek behind the wheel, and there just wasn't enough room to keep traction.
Here's another replay, looking to the inside, getting up too close and having to lock up the wheels. Getting a wheel off on the right side that spins the car around. There's an example of what being a little bit over-aggressive can do to you. But he keeps the engine going, lets the clutch out, and is back in action once again, albeit a good ways back in 2nd place now.
Yeah, in some respects, that was a planned spin, because what Moretti discovered was he was just too hot into the corner, and he was getting ready to rear end Derek Bell, and so he thought, well, I'll get on the binders. Maybe if I execute a spin that I planned, maybe I can get it out of this without too much trouble, and that's exactly what happened.
You saw the red GTO car being passed. Good example of the past and future in Porsche. That was a Porsche 935 in the GTO class being driven by Chet Vincennes. That was a car that used to dominate this series until the arrival of this Porsche, the 962. Moretti now overtaking one of the BF Goodrich cars and headed for the pits, followed by a BMW.
That was the BF Goodrich car of Busby Morton, probably John Morton behind the wheel. Here comes Moretti bringing that Brunn Porsche into the pit area as he pits right behind the BMW. Driver change taking place there. As John Watson's McLaren orange helmet gets in, David Hobbs' Union Jack gets out. We talked to him a little earlier about what's going on with BMW.
Well, it's not so different from the car we started the season with. The front end of the bodywork has been modified quite considerably to give a lot more downforce. The underneath is the same. It's got full-length tunnels. They create a lot of downforce as well. It's still got the twin-slotted rear wing, which gives a lot of downforce. The radiators are behind the driver. The radiators, the intercoolers to keep hot air out of the cockpit. It's pretty well a stock GTP type car. They're all built within certain rules and regulations, which they all have to be the same in some respects. It's just a two-seater racing car from the ground up, and I think at the Watkins Glen, with the drag we've got and the downforce we've got, we should be able to pull about 190 miles an hour down the straight. Well, of course, the motor is the heart of any racing car, and in the BMW here, it's an offshoot of the Formula One engine, which they've won the World Championship with in 1983, and it's slightly bigger capacity. It's 2 litre instead of 1.5 litre. It's a slightly longer stroke, so we can't rev it quite like the Formula One car, but still in all, with race boosts, we're probably getting round about 750 to 800 horsepower, and for qualifying, when you can just turn the boost up, well, we'll get what it takes. And I think on qualifying boost, we'll probably be pulling nearly 1,000 horsepower. Well, I think our testing, of course, is going to be invaluable. Most of the teams, of course, have been testing for a couple of years now. All the Porsches, the 962s, of course, they've been racing now for 3 years. So they don't really need to do the testing that we do. This is a new car, new project, new engine, and we need to do all the testing we can. Our testing at Watkins Glen has gone pretty successfully, yeah. So hopefully it'll stand us in good stead this coming weekend.
Well, that remains to be seen as this man, Derek Bell, continues to lead in his Porsche 962. Good news, Steve Durst and 2 course workers hurt in that earlier crash. We understand they're going to be all right. That's good news indeed. Plenty of racing still to come. Stay with us. And the search for a $75,000 first prize. Here is your leader, world champion Derek Bell, pulling down onto pit road where Gary Lee is waiting. Let's go down to Gary Lee in the pits right now.
Here is your leader, the Lowenbrow Porsche number 14. The crew has been ready now for 3 or 4 laps of very good fuel mileage for the Porsche as Derek Bell climbs out immediately as the car goes up in the pneumatic jacks. A 4-tire change. Al Holbert is already back in for his second stint behind the wheel. Now, Al had hoped to make the race on only 3 stops. However, with the mileage we're getting now, although good, it appears that this Porsche will have to make 4 stops to go the distance. So already the driver change has been complete. Derek Bell about to climb back over the inside pit wall. He walks back to have a seat. And a very, very fast pit stop for the Lowenbrow Porsche number 14. There's a lot of congestion, a lot of traffic in the pit area. They have to push the car back to give Al Holbert enough room to get that Porsche out of his respective pit. He kills the engine, refires the engine, kills it again, fires it again, and there he goes, Al Holbert.
Well, despite that fire drill, a 46-second stop, 14 was so far out in front that Al Holbert still has the lead. There you saw the number 3 Porsche of Dr. Giampiero Moretti running in second place. John Watson and the number 19 BMW, you see right there, following the number 5 Porsche of Price Cobb, is presently running in 3rd position.
Bob, I would agree with Gary, unless they pull a rabbit out of the hat on the number 14 Porsche, even though they went 38, 39 laps by our unofficial count. That's textbook distance in terms of a load of fuel, but they stopped so early the first time at lap number 28. It doesn't seem like they can go the distance on 2 more stops.
Now there is a look at the number 7 car. That is the Jack Roush prepared Mustang of Bruce Jenner and Scott Pruitt. Jenner apparently in the car at this moment. They are leading the GTO category for production-based over 3-liter engine cars. No turbochargers in this class. A big 5-liter V8 prepared in Jack Roush's Livonia, Michigan shops in that machine. Scott Pruitt with a healthy lead in GTO points. Running in second place, a sentimental favorite, the number 91 Porsche 935 of Chet Vincennes. And here is your third place car, the Jack Baldwin, Jeff Bodine Chevrolet Camaro in Levi Garrett colors today. Third position in the GTO category. There is your leader in GTU. These are the under 3-liter divisions. Roger Mandeville and Danny Smith sharing a car. Mandeville, a 2-time champion in this class. He has led since the 20th lap here at Watkins Glen.
And there, back up to the GTP cars, is the vet still trying to work out whatever might have gone wrong in that little shunt about 5, 6, 7 laps ago. And one of the BMW cars beginning to mount the challenge.
Here is the leader in the Camel Lights category for the smaller prototypes. That is the Charles Morgan Logan Blackburn Buick-powered Tyga Racer.
Charles Morgan from Conway, Arkansas. You old-time sprint car drivers will remember a name, Bobby Ward, a guy who was from Conway.
Okay, Gary Lee is standing by in the Lowenbrow pits now with Derek Bell, who has just gotten out of the car and handed it over to Al Holbert. Let's hear from them.
What a look of fatigue, the feet in a bucket of water, the Nomex underwear peeled off. I find it hard to believe that you enjoy doing this and look forward to going back out in about an hour.
I enjoy this bit, but the last 10 laps are pretty hard. You know, the cool suit really ends up not being very effective in that heat. And I was worried about a fuel pressure problem we had. They kept going down under braking for the fast corners, which sort of caught my attention a lot, you know. But apart from that, the car was great.
The concentration factor must be horrendous late in your driving stint. The cool suit may not be working, it's hot in the cockpit, and you really find it difficult to concentrate.
Yeah, yes. I concentrate all right, but I just wish I could get it over with, you know. It's pretty hard. Once I sort of pulled away from number 3 a bit, and then he pitted for fuel and whatever. It sort of gave me a lead, and for 5 laps I was sort of a bit worried about keeping the pace up. But I'm not, I mean, I'm very hot, but I'm not tired, if you know what I mean. It's just the heat.
41-year-old Derek Bell, fresh off an airplane from Pagham, England. Here you see the second place car of John Watson pulling into the pits. He was running third. He had taken over second place. He will probably give up second place to the number 3 Porsche of Moretti during this pit stop. John Watson pulling down to meet David Hobbs.
You can see the shimmering waves of heat. Derek Bell had not just taken a shower. He is that warm. Remember, we are in the Finger Lakes region of upstate New York. There are some very scenic lakes around here, but when it gets hot in the summer, it also gets very humid and makes for some unpleasant conditions when you're inside of a speeding race car where the temperatures are well above 100 degrees.
Here's the number 3 Porsche making its way past the start-finish line. They will assume second place from the number 19 BMW. So your order is now Al Holbert leading in the number 14 Porsche, followed by, whoa, and we've got a problem. This is John Morton climbing out of the number 67 BF Goodrich machine. Obviously, looks like an electrical problem there. He's looking in the passenger side door where all the wires are.
Jim Busby, of course, is the man who heads up this team. They've fielded 2 cars. They used to have little Mazdas that they ran in the IMSA GTP competition. They've gone to the Porsche 962s. The wins don't come with the regularity that they would hope, but they are consistent in fielding 2 teams.
Here's the number 5 car, Bob Aiken's machine, presently being driven by Bryce Cobb, earning valuable driver points. You see a dice now. Watson, understand, coming back out now. He hasn't changed over drivers. He is being pressed hard by the Buick-powered March Racer, the number 46 car. Whitney Gantz driving that machine.
The Buick Hawk, the Phil Conti team that's had so many breakdowns the last couple of seasons, it seems to be leveling out for them. The car seems to be getting just a little better every time. And I kind of feel like they are in line for a win. It's not going to happen today. They don't look like one of the top 3 runners today, as this car does, the number 3 Porsche, but things are getting better for the Buick Hawk.
Whitney Gantz, probably the fastest art history major in all of motorsports. Now here is a potential problem. The number 44 Jaguars in the pits. They're looking under the engine hood. That could be problems in big time. We'll be right back. New York, 93 laps in. Bob Barsha and Larry Newber with you. Gary Lee along pit road. And here is your leader, 4-time defending IMSA Camel GT champion Al Holbert of Warrington, Pennsylvania. Holbert Holbert has just driven a beautiful race today, minding traffic, passing only when someone else makes a mistake. He is really the picture of conservative but opportunistic driving. Pit stop, the number 3 car. This should be Dr. Giampiero Moretti handing over to Oscar Larori of Argentina.
And this race has suddenly whittled down to a 2-car race. That is, if both this car and the Hobart Bell number 14 Porsche can finish this. The only 2 cars on the lead lap. They've been able to put everybody else a lap down through a combination of pretty crafty pit work and also superior speed out on the racetrack.
Now here is the number 19 BMW with Irishman John Watson at the wheel. He will pass the start-finish line and reassume second place. Good shot here of the BMWs at flank speed, running in formation. John Watson, the number 19 machine right there, followed by the number 18 BMW, young Davy Jones, the Super V veteran, behind the wheel.
The BMWs qualified 7th and 10th this week. The Watson-Hobbs car, which probably David Hobbs turning in the quick lap, was the 7th quick timer, and the Jones-Andretti car, again, not concentrating on qualifying, but still good enough to grid 10th in this BMW.
You see the different sunliners atop of the windshield, one blue, the other red. That helps the crews to differentiate one car from the other when they pit, because their pits are right next to one another.
The IMSA people figure that the recent BMW announcement that they are going to be withdrawing from Formula One racing should bode quite well for this type of racing next year, maybe a little more emphasis from the factory.
North America, the prize market of all the big European car builders, Porsche, Ferrari. They see Ferrari in IMSA racing within the very near future. Of course, the rumors are rampant that they will have an Indy car before too very long. Here's a look at Texan Bryce Cobb, hoping to gain valuable driver points by joining Bob Aiken and Englishman James Weaver, the number 5 car, presently shown in 6th place.
Yeah, that car started in 11th position. They've already crested as high as 4th. Pit stops kicked them back down to 5th and eventually 6th. So the car has been performing well since it shot off from the 11th grid hole.
Running in 6th place as a result of the problem suffered by the number 67 BF Goodrich Porsche, which stopped at trackside just a few moments ago. Gary Lee asked Jim Busby what was the problem that John Morton had.
John called in and said that something snapped in the drive line. At first he just said he was coming in, and then he called in again and said he pulled off the side of the road. Something had let go in the clutch of the main drive line. We're running a real conservative pace, and it looked like we could just sit it out and wait to finish up at the front, and then to have some snap in the clutch is very disappointing.
So Racing Luck gets up and bites the Jim Busby team. They still have the number 68 car in the race. Here is the 3rd place car, Oscar Larori of Argentina, back out once again. He'll be trying to run down this car, the number 19 car, being driven by John Watson, hoping to take 2nd place back once again behind Al Holbert. There you see Holbert. There's the BMW. He is a lap down, however.
You know, a lot of the braking that goes on in contemporary Major League automobile racing is an indirect result of the aerodynamics. You have to go to it. That's what makes the cars go so fast. You combine that with horsepower, but it puts a lot of stress on items like suspension pieces, drive chain, clutches, and the like. You have to do it, but boy, does it put a lot of pressure on the equipment.
Speaking of that aerodynamics, one of the problems the BMW suffered, and the reason that they pulled out of the series briefly, was because they were having difficulties with the aerodynamics of this car. And I think they invented a new word for motorsports. They had problems with the body parts falling off. They called it delamination. I like that. Here is the number 46 car, presently shown in 4th place, Whitney Gantz behind the wheel of the Buick Hawk.
Yeah, we mentioned earlier about how well they would like to do here. They fit into the category of about 3 or 4 teams who have gotten over the hump. No longer are they going to be satisfied with just finishing races. They finally established that they can, and now they want to go for victory.
A big problem faced by this team earlier was so much horsepower out of the turbocharged Buick engine, a little too much for the chassis work. They seem to have it under control. They've got a 2nd place this year, that at Road Atlanta, when the Corvette won earlier this year. You see both BMWs in the picture, and Al Holbert threatening to overtake the number 18 car, being driven right now by Davy Jones, the Super V star.
And remember, both of the BMW cars are already one lap down. So we're not talking about Hobart putting the first lap on this duel or an ensuing battle for the lead. Hobart has got things well in control here as we approach the 100-lap mark in this 148-lap race.
Could be a good opportunity for those BMW teammates to make some time on the leader by doing a little bit of tactical blocking, shall we say. Good look there at the remaining BF Goodrich Porsche in the race, presently shown in 7th position. That is Jochen Maas, driving the number 68 machine, trying to get a pass on the number 63 Mazda-powered Argo racer of Jim Downing and John Bafucci. Downing, the one and only champion in the Camel Lights class as they enter their second full year of competing as a class. Good look here at a variety of different cars. You saw Roger Mandeville's GTU machine out back. The battle is for first place as Al Holbert puts another lap on the number 19 BMW of John Watson. Plenty of racing still to come. Watch Derek Bell getting ready. Could be another driver change coming up. And if we have one, it could be the very last of the day. The drama is just beginning here at Watkins Glen. Stay with us.
14 Lowenthal Porsche, leaving it on the track as long as possible, running every drop of fuel through that engine right now. Derek Bell climbs aboard. This should be the last driver change. Now, it's unlikely Derek can go the distance without stopping for fuel. In fact, he's going to use that large lead to conserve the brakes. At this point, there have been no trouble, no problems reported from the braking mechanisms, but it is at this point in the race when the endurance begins to take its toll. So we're wondering just how much of the brakes we actually have left. Derek says he should be able to go for all but the final 8 laps before ducking into the pits for just a splash of fuel. So once again, this should be the final driver change for the Lowenbrow Porsche. We'll see how long Derek can stay out before he comes in for that one splash of fuel.
Derek may know just a little more than what he's letting on. That may be a little bit of advertising here. Listen to this, 107 laps this time. The last pit stop was lap 66. That means he went 41 laps on this load of fuel. Guess what? There are 41 laps left in this race. So theoretically, based on what we've seen, they can go the distance with no more stops for fuel. So I would have agreed with Gary's comment, but after checking my stats here and see that he's gone 41 laps, I say no. I think they might be able to pull it off, but it will be magic, I'll tell you that.
You saw Al Holbert waving 2 fingers at his crewman. He wanted 2 quarts of oil added to the car. Maybe they're having some kind of mechanical problem. We'll watch that as well. Here is the BMW M team, the number 19 car. David Hobbs now behind the wheel. I beg your pardon. John Watson still behind the wheel. A pit stop expected shortly for them for the final driver's stint. Here is the number 76 car, Jeff Bodine and Jack Baldwin, presently leading the GTO category and running strong.
Bodine, who has not been here since 1972. Let's see, that's more than 3 or 4 years ago. And when the weekend started out, Jeff said, "Boy, I am lost. I don't know what I'm going to do," but I think he's gotten with the program. He has shown marked improvement all week long, and they obviously are in position for a very strong finish.
Jack Baldwin ran the first 2.5 hours of that car in this 100-degree heat. You've got to know it's an awful lot hotter than that inside these cars. So it's a real workhorse effort for Jack Baldwin, presently running 3rd in the GTU season point standings. To this man, I beg your pardon, that's Bruce Jenner in there. He is presently in 2nd position in points. His teammate in the Roush Mustang, Scott Pruitt, a former go-kart champion out of California, is the leader in points, comfortably, I might add.
Yeah, Pruitt has won 5 times this year. He's accumulated 142 points, much more than anybody else in IMSA racing. Jenner is currently 2nd in points. He picked up his first win ever this year in IMSA racing when he won at Sebring.
Jenner, of course, the Olympic decathlon champion at the Montreal Games back in 1976, and made a very smooth transition into motorsports. He, in fact, raced go-karts in former years, something he and his co-driver Pruitt have in common. Here is your leader in the Camel Lights class, Ray Bellum and Gordon Spice, and the Pontiac Fiero, a car that won in only its 3rd race. Phenomenal achievement for these complex prototype machines.
Well, a car that came out of Detroit, but a couple of England drivers are behind the wheel. They have 2 previous wins. I think we mentioned that earlier this year. They won at Charlotte and at Laguna, and the car has performed very well considering its short tenure in the sport of Major League Automobile racing.
We'll take another long look down the backstretch. You see the number 44 Jaguar of Chip Robinson and Bob Tullius making its way around. A few problems earlier in the race have dropped them back to 8th place, but they're still in it.
Chip Robinson, who lives near the Flemington Fair Speedway in New Jersey. From time to time, Chip goes down the street and takes in the good old modified dirt track racing. But Chip Robinson, who probably is headed toward Indianapolis, is staking his claim in racing on the pavement.
Here's a sentimental favorite for all you ESPN motorsports fans, Bill Adam, who normally occupies the chair next to me here. Bill decided with their $75,000 on the line, by gosh, I'm going to go racing. The heck with television.
Are they paying you that much for this show?
Sure.
For Bill and Bruce Levin, who is involved in this, it's their first race in a long time. The first race for this car is a freshman, over the pond and out of the box. So they're working a lot of bugs out, not only the machine, but themselves this weekend.
Pit stop here. David Hobbs will replace John Watson in the car. I believe it's still Watson inside the machine, though, as you see Hobbs with the British flag Union Jack emblem on top of his helmet. Here is your second place car, the BMW having pitted. This is Oscar Larori of Argentina, presently running in second place on the lead lap with Derek Bell in the number 14 Porsche. We mentioned Bill Adam and Bruce Levin. Levin got out of his Porsche and fell down, collapsed from the heat. If you don't believe it's hot here, folks, Bruce Levin collapsed. He was taken to the hospital. He's been cooled off. He's reportedly in fine shape. And let me tell you, you don't want to be the nurse trying to keep Bruce Levin in the hospital if he wants to get back to the racetrack.
Back to the number 19 BMW, the Watson Hobbs machine with John Watson opting to staying behind the wheel. They had a long weekend. They had a lot of toe-ins on Friday and Saturday. A lot of little problems kept cropping up, but so far, none have surfaced today.
The BMWs can finish, Larry. I think they'd consider it a victory today. Here is your leader, Al Holbert, comfortably, almost a full lap out in front. The question is, does he have the brakes? Does he have the fuel that he needs to get all the way to the finish? Beg your pardon, I said Holbert. Derek Bell will finish up, driving the 4th driver's stint of the day. As we take a long look down the backstretch here at Watkins Glen, there is your leader, Derek Bell, followed by the Porsche and the BMW. We'll be back with more racing right afterwards. Of the 500-mile Camel Continental, and you're looking at the number 46 Buick Hawk of Jim Crawford out of Scotland.
Jim Crawford, who was basically rewarded with this ride for his great work at the last moment at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway running the March Buick-powered car. The Buick people were so pleased that they made the suggestion that maybe that Jim gets some more experience with the IMSA GTP cars. You know, there's a lot of correlation between the performance of the IMSA cars to the potential performance of Indianapolis cars, and so Jim gets this ride because of that.
Certainly in the same class horsepower-wise, looking at roughly 700 horses on average, although this particular Buick turbocharged engine can be fired up to something well in excess of that. Whitney Gantz told me they've had over 1,000 horsepower on the dynamometer with that machine. The number 68 Porsche, presently being driven by Darren Brasfield, probably making the last driver's stint for that car. We've carried our onboard camera throughout the day.
Brasfield came into today's race with 5 career wins, still looking for his first win in any IMSA GT category for 1986, but he's found the sled a little tougher going in these super high-powered exotic GTP cars than some of the other divisions from years past.
It was at this racetrack a year ago that Darren Brasfield won a GTO race, a series of victories, 6 out of the last 10, in fact, that brought him to the attention of Jim Busby. There you're watching Bryce Cobb making his way around in the number 5 car, presently shown 7th on the racetrack.
They've had a high water mark of 5th today, so all in all, it's been a pretty decent day for this team. The team was pieced together. Of course, it's been a very rough year for car owner Bob Aiken.
You saw the Corvette briefly. They have obviously got the problems worked out on that car, running way back in the pack, however. We don't expect to see much more of a challenge from Doc Bundy and Cyril Vandenberg today. Here is your leader, Derek Bell, in the number 14 Lowenbrow Porsche.
Al Holbert's team, I'll tell you, this guy has got a way of putting it all together and really being able to get it up and go when you have to. They've not had what you'd call a spectacular season yet. Al Holbert has been involved in 2 of the last 3 wins on the trail, and with the big money up for grabs, $75,000 on the nose today. Look who's here, an old familiar face, the blue and white Lowenbrow number 14.
Al Holbert that we mentioned earlier, not only races these cars, he builds them. He conducts the importation of Porsche cars in his capacity as director of Porsche Motorsports North America. Now here you have the number 3 Porsche in the pits. They're pitting in second place. Now this could be damaging if they spend too much time in here. Oscar Larori in the car. They're trying to hold off that number 19 BMW of David Hobbs and John Watson. We'll have to keep an eye on how long they're in the pits.
They came in with a little bit more than a lap lead over third place, so this stop can be reasonably casual. Here comes the number 19 car around. It does not look like anybody has an opportunity to catch the leader, Holbert and Bell, so it really looks like an opportunity for that Brun Porsche team to execute, hopefully, a flawless pit stop without too much extra pressure. Although here comes the BMW car around.
Keep in mind, Al Holbert and Derek Bell are trying to run 41 laps on a tank full of fuel. Very, very close to the margin. They do have a little bit of a lead that would allow them to stop for perhaps 15 or 20 seconds and get enough fuel to make it the rest of the way. But there is another question as well, and that is their brakes. We're getting word from the pit that the Lowenbrow crew is very concerned about the status of Derek Bell's brakes at this point.
We have been getting, conversely, no adverse reactions or responses from anybody about tires. Those of you who watch Formula One races know that the tires, as the number 3 Porsche comes out, he's getting out in plenty of time. He's going to hold on to that run-up position. Back to the tires. As you know, in Formula One, the teams have found that the extra time that you take to make one extra stop for tires, you more than make up for it with the extra speed on the racetrack. Not been a factor here at Glen today.
Through the S's goes Oscar Larori, hoping to hold on to that runner-up spot. That would be the best performance by the Brun Motorsports team this year out of West Germany.
A real international team, a team from West Germany. The drivers are from Argentina, from Italy, and from Australia. Brun Schuppan was listed as one of the potential pilots for today's race.
Now there you see the number 19 BMW bouncing its way down the long backstretch. You see just how close they got to getting all the way around on the number 3 Porsche. And it looks as though John Watson is going to get everything he's got. He's going to try to run down Larori in the Porsche. Let's see how he does.
David Hobbs said it best and very succinctly when he said, "This is a big race for us." Oh, there's a spin! Hobbs is able to keep it between the walls, but David Hobbs, or rather Watson, putting a very hard spin on that BMW going into that tight right-hander.
John Watson got on the brakes a little bit early. We'll have a replay of the race for you. We'll show you the incident. And as we do, watch when the flame comes out of the side as he downshifts just in front of the left rear wheel, and watch the brake lights come on. There's the downshift. There he gets on the brakes. He's a little hot going in, and you saw the car hop. He was tossed in the air, and then, well, he was basically at the mercy of physics.
Yeah, it was just plain and simple. Looked like a mistake. He was not in the racing line. The shift was not hit at just the right time, and looked like a combination of small errors there that put Watson where you see him right now.
Now, apparently he's stalled the engine. They're pushing him off, but John Watson's not getting out of the car. We'll have to see if he can get restarted and try to hold down third position. Here is your second place car.
Oscar Larori. Moretti were the team drivers today in this car. A car that showed up here from Watkins Glen. Everybody knew they would be competitive, but I don't think they quite figured they would be as competitive as they have been. As we told you earlier in the broadcast, it's not been a one-day phenomenon. It's been this way all weekend.
Derek Bell continues to make his way around. Moving up on the GTO runner-up, car number 76 of Jack Baldwin and Jeff Bodine. Through the same point, we don't see the BMW at that turn, so apparently John Watson is able to get the BMW back in the race, and we'll be back right after these words. Continental, and you see Irishman John Watson, who has managed to get that crippled BMW back around to the pit.
This BMW, one of 6 non-Porsches which competed in today's race. There were, of course, 2 BMWs. Remember, 2 Jags, that 1 Corvette, and the 1 Buick. And at one time or another, in stages of the race, every one of those 6 has performed well.
They'll be certainly trying to get the BMW back out. They were running in 3rd position at the time of Watson's spin. They are now shown as 6th on the racetrack. We'll keep an eye on them. Meanwhile, here is your leader, Derek Bell. When he comes around, he'll have 1 lap to go, but we understand that things are not going well for that team right now.
Well, you begin to wonder about the bumpiness of this racetrack. Derek Bell said, yeah, there's some smooth spots out there between all the bumps. it begins to take its toll. A lot of the parts seem to wear thin, and it seems like in automobile racing, no matter how solid machines run, there are often a lot of front runners that break down at the very final stages of a race.
Word from the pits is that Derek Bell's fuel light is beginning to flicker. We told you they may be having fuel problems with that car. They may have taken it too far, and we'll just have to watch. Brakes also gone away. Meanwhile, you saw there the number 46 car presently running in third position. Jim Crawford and Whitney Gantz in the Buick Hawk, hoping to duplicate their second-place performance at Road Atlanta, presently shown third on the racetrack.
Jim Crawford, who actually did a lot of practicing this weekend on race tires, not qualifying tires, and got a lot of very valuable practice right now, has got to be extending himself. Down at the end of this race, everything begins to wear thin.
They're shown in third place after the Watson spin. They moved up from fourth into third. As you see the Scott Pruitt Bruce Jenner Mustang leading them around. Just before we broke away from our shot of Derek Bell, you may have noticed he allowed the 44 Jaguar to pass him. Derek Bell is definitely slowing down in an effort to conserve fuel and brakes. Here is your runner-up car, the number 3 Porsche of Oscar Larari of Argentina, making his way down the front straightaway. He too will have 1 lap to go.
They are 1 lap down to the leaders, so even if Derek Bell has some type of problem out there in the course, he has got 3.4 miles, let's round it off, to try and nurse home. Now, we have not seen any indication yet. We're just speculating on some of the possible scenarios down here at the final stages of this event.
Oscar Larari making his way around, having shared that Porsche 962 today with Dr. Gianpiero Moretti of Italy. Massimo Sigala of Italy also listed in that car, although he has not gotten behind the wheel today. Here is your leader, Derek Bell, making his way around the track. He will have
for the white flag this time around. You know, many of you have those newfangled cars, particularly those foreign-made jobs, and the little voice comes on and says, fuel level is low, fuel level is low. Well, that might be what's going on in the cockpit with Derek Bell. We told you about that report that we think we picked up in the pit area about the fuel warning light beginning to flicker. Well, let's see if we get any indication of that as Derek Bell traverses this final lap.
He does have a reserve tank at his disposal that allows him a few extra miles, but it certainly won't take him more than a couple of laps around this 3.4-mile racetrack. Still, Derek Bell staying clear of traffic, keeping up his speed.
He opts to go around the Davy Jones, John Andretti BMW. They are in 5th position right now, and we mentioned earlier, I think, just a finish for either or both of the BMWs would be a victory for them. They got to be very happy that both cars are still on the racetrack.
Once more through the boot, avoiding a GTU competitor in front of them, followed closely by the BMW. Derek Bell braking early, slowing down whenever he can, trying to extend his fuel load to the finish line here at Watkins Glen.
He moves up eastward on the final 5th of this racetrack. He'll make a hard left-hander coming up here after this right-hander. Then he'll go back toward the pit area, the final 2 bends before the start-finish line.
Overcoming the Vincennes Porsche 935, presently running 3rd in the GTO category. Derek Bell out of Pagham, England, looks as though he and co-driver Al Holbert have just about called it right. There can't be but a whisper of fuel left in that Porsche.
Boy, 41 laps absolutely test all of the slide rules and calculators going for the amount of fuel. He's swishing back and forth trying to get that last drop of fuel out.
Derek Bell and Al Holbert take the checkered flag. 4th victory of the year for Al Holbert, the all-time winningest driver in IMSA Camel GT history. As we watch the number 3 Porsche 962 of Oscar Larari and Dr. Gianpiero Moretti and Massimo Sigala taking 2nd place today.
What do you suppose it ever gets routine winning? After Bell went by the start-finish line, the hand came off the steering wheel, just like he was at a four-way stop, thanking a fellow driver for letting him go through first.
And here's your 3rd place car, the Buick Hawk of Whitney Gantz out of California and Scotland's Jim Crawford. They have to be a very, very happy team today as well.
And there is Derek Bell on his traditional cool-off lap. It looks like he's got his helmet off already. That's an indication of the extreme heat. There's Derek giving a wave to all of you there at home.
Here is your leader in the Camel Lights category. Charles Morgan and Logan Blackburn will go on to take the victory in the Camel Lights class, driving a Buick-powered Tiger Racer, very much like the Buick power plant in the Gance Crawford car, except no turbocharging. And a very, very happy crew there today as well.
And of course, the 6, like in SCCA Trans Am racing, is indication of the number of cylinders that go up and down.
Here comes your victor in the GTO category, one of the production-based categories today, Jack Baldwin and Jeff Bodine. Bodine making a very, very successful debut in IMSA Camel GT racing. Al Holbert and Derek Bell, your winners, and we'll be right back to talk with them after this. In Pennsylvania, cheering for Al Holbert and Brian Redman. Holbert, of course, just won the Camel Continental with co-driver Derek Bell now pulling into victory lane. Brian Redman co-driving with Hurley Haywood out of Florida in the 04 Jaguar, suffered mechanical woes after lap 40 and finished 43rd overall today. Here are the summaries of today's race. 4 hours, 37 minutes total duration, just under 500 miles covered at an average speed of just over 108 miles. We'll go into the record books as a record for this event, which has changed from a 3-hour event last year. Let's go down to Gary Lee with the winners.
Derek, you told us this weekend you like to drive the anchor leg because you like to drive your heart out, and it took exactly that this afternoon.
Well, I don't know, I drove my heart out. I think we both drove as best as we possibly could. Just that I was under slight problems with, worrying about the brakes. I didn't have a brake problem, but I was aware that the brake light was on for the whole hour, and I just wanted to overstress the car, and have to change pads.
The team was also prepared for that pit stop on the very last lap, but you didn't need it.
Yeah, I was just changing very early and cruising around for the last 12 laps.
Realistically, how much fuel did you have left?
I wouldn't have done another lap, truthfully. I was on the reserve.
Al, he says he likes to drive the anchor leg, but it's got to be tough for you when it's nail-biting time and you can't do a doggone thing about it.
Well, that's true, but if it's just the fuel or something like that, I'd rather be where I have all the information and I can help guide him. Ultimately, we left it up to Derek, gave him as much information as we could, but as I said, he was the only one that knew the condition of the car. So I like being in there at the end too, but this time with so many contingencies, I was glad where I was.
Masters of information and execution, Al Holbert and Derek Bell, the best in the business, winning today's Camel Continental at Watkins Glen over Oscar Larari, Massimo Segala, and Gianpiero Moretti. In the Camel Lights classification, Charles Morgan and Logan Blackburn winning over Ray Bellum and Gordon Spice, defending series champ Jim Downing and John Mafucci coming in third. In the GTO class for production-based big engine cars, Jack Baldwin and NASCAR star Jeff Bodine emerged triumphant. In the GTU class for smaller engine cars, Roger Mandeville and Danny Smith have won as well. Today's ESPN coverage of the International Motorsports Association Camel Continental has been brought to you by BF Goodrich TA Radials, built for you to take on the road. By Ford and your Ford dealer. Have you driven a Ford lately? By Budweiser, Beechwood aged for that clean, crisp taste. This Bud's for you. And by BMW, the ultimate driving machine. To arrange a thorough test drive, simply phone your nearest BMW dealer. Well, from a soggy pair of feet in the pits to victory lane, it's been a great afternoon for Derek Bell and Al Holbert, winners of today's Camel Continental, and a check for $75,000, the largest first prize in the history of sports car racing. We hope you've enjoyed today's coverage of the race and that you'll join us for the next stop on our ESPN tour of International Motorsports Association events, the Camel GT from Portland, Oregon, coming up on August 9th. For now, this is Bob Varsha for Gary Lee and Larry Newber and all of us here at ESPN. Thank you for joining us, and so long from Watkins Glen, New York.